The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, right here for you for a little, our August live Sovryn Tech Patreon only Q&A. Is that a mouthful or what? I know a thing or two about mouthfuls. Oh, maybe that was a little too much. So I got a few people watching already. We got somebody lined up in the Hangout room, which is cool. So this is going to be good. We'll go about an hour. Normally, I just want to get this out of the gate right now. Normally, I will release this episode. This like an audio recording of this. I will release it within like a couple hours of when we're done. So we should be done around 5 o'clock, maybe a little bit after. Always ends up running a little bit longer. That's fine. But I'm going to release this tomorrow just because I didn't realize earlier I just released the Wednesday Q&A that you get every Wednesday. So instead of doubling down on you and giving you twice, just giving you way too much content, I was like, all right, well, we'll save the live Hangout. We'll release that on audio on Thursday. So if you're wondering, wow, why didn't this come out right away? That's actually by design. So anyway, why don't we go ahead? If we got one person in the Hangout already, we have Daniel. If we're good to go, if you're good to go, Daniel, let's get right into the questions, and then we'll start fielding stuff from the YouTube chat. I will take questions from the YouTube chat if you have them, and I'll just keep checking on it. So, yeah, Daniel, if you're there, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we can make this happen.
Hey, I think that's quite an assumption to say that 2 hours of Brian Sovryn in one day is too much. I don't know about that. I think you need to go back to the drawing board on that one.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people, I mean, boy, they say they can't get enough, but okay. Anyway, thanks, man.
No, I mean, me personally, I can get enough. So no, I'm just kidding. So I had a question. It wasn't so much a question. It was more just wanting to hear your thoughts. I can obviously only judge you based on sort of, or not judge you, but judge based on the output that I've seen.
Sure.
And what it seems in terms of sort of literary content, as it will, that you put out up until the newsletter, it was maybe a 2099 episode or a Soviet Tech episode once every, say, 50 episodes or something, and a bunch of interstitials, over 25 episodes.
Right.
But we're not talking about a massive amount of fiction writing, whereas now you're going with some sort of new fiction every other week. And I'm curious to get inside your head in terms of the sort of the creative aspect, the creative output of it, not underestimating the creative output that is needed, to put the Sovryn Tech once a week. But has the fact that you kind of committed to publicly, putting out fiction, to whatever length it is, but putting out every other week, has that commitment made you more productive, or has that kind of given you writer's block? What is your experience with that in terms of needing to deliver on a completely different aspect that you've needed to in the past?
Sure. No, great question. Yeah, I mean, to some degree, well, I guess to answer this, like a lot of this fiction stuff that I'm going forward with has been in the works for like a long time. Like I've had it in mind, wanted to do it for a very long time. So like I haven't, so to answer quick about the writer's block, I haven't experienced writer's block yet, even though I have tricks to avoid that. And I can explain those quickly, but I know your question's more expansive than that. But with the writer's block, because I've had a lot of these ideas in mind, for so long, and because I'm really only like, especially with the newsletter, like you mentioned, how I'm doing short fiction at the end of it, which people are loving, by the way, that like short fiction, I can make it any length. There isn't like a set 10,000 words or something like that. I know a lot of people like Jeffrey Tucker and some others, they have the recommendation, and he's not the only one. There's plenty of people that say, well, you got to learn to like write every day. I did get into that knack for like a year because I used to have daily content on my old website at zomiaofflinegames.com. So for me, okay, real quick, the trick for how to not get writer's block, I'll explain that quickly. And my trick is that when I need to stop writing, or if I'm done writing, like if I'm just exhausted from the creative process, I always end a sentence mid-sentence. Like it'll say something to the effect of, and Agent Sovryn did, and then like you stop there, because then when you come back to it, it's like a prompt that you just have to, that you can continue with. There's action already going. And that makes it a lot easier than if you have a complete sentence and suddenly you have to, start writing from that. Like, okay, where do we go next? You already know where you go next if you stop your sentence mid-sentence. So that's a trick that I do to get around writer's block. But anyway, beyond that, working with deadlines, setting deadlines for myself, like I'm actually really, this isn't meant to be a pat on the back. I'm great under pressure. Like I'm almost at my best, and I have, well, again, none of this is meant to be pats on the back. I'm just saying I have a lot of personal integrity. So when I say like, I want something to be out then, and there's times where I can't make my deadlines, but I feel absolutely terrible about it. I mean, like it wrecks me inside. So it's really, the deadlines have helped me be a lot more productive. But it's an odd hybrid, because I have a deadline, but then also I don't really have the constraint or the constriction of like a hard amount, say with the fiction, of like a set amount of words that have to be there. So, it's nice to have that freedom, but at the same time, it's great to have the discipline of a deadline, to help me be a lot more productive. And I mean, it's a byproduct of my, my like, I guess maybe Q class celebritydom that there's people who are going to hold me accountable to it if I don't deliver. So, that really actually does help me out a lot, is having those deadlines. What other question do you have in that, Daniel?
No, it did remind me to ask you, whatever did happen to the Zog blog? Like, is that completely offline now?
The site's still there. I didn't mess around with renewing the certificate, so people get errors sometimes when they go to the site and whatever.
Okay.
As far as what happened with that, like, I think I've talked about this a little bit, but I had somewhat specific goals with that. First off, it was to train me like to get into writing more and to do kind of that writing every day thing, which I agree can be pretty important. But like, I really wanted, what I was hoping for was that content, and sometimes it would happen, but that content would get shared, especially at the time. I still, I was a little more enthusiastic than I am now about the Liberty movement, and that it would get shared around by people, because I had noticed people sharing content, like before I started the Zog blog or the Dark Android blog or whatever. I noticed a lot of people would be, sharing stories that, like, I don't know, whoever, Jeffrey Tucker, I could list off names, but I don't care to give them the credit. Like sharing how to use Firefox and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, but this article is bullshit. It's like, so here, I'll make a legit one. But it doesn't work that way, because really, like, when you get into, especially when you get into kind of a like social circles and a movement and everything, they're just sharing whatever their friends are doing. They're not really sharing great content. So I mean, I know that all sounds kind of harsh, but that's kind of why I stopped with the Zog blog, because while I was getting hundreds or thousands of visits to my site, all of which is great, and I'm sure that brought on some listeners, it wasn't really working towards the initial goals that I had for it. And that might, yeah, I don't know if that sounds off or anything.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It does, yeah.
Sure.
And
yeah, so,
in terms of inspiration, like, obviously you are a big sci-fi fan. So you've probably got a number of different shows that you draw your inspiration from. And I think by this point, everyone who's listened to you knows what your favorite shows are, or what your favorite movies are. But I guess to some degree or another, it's probably a synthesis of many of them that kind of feed into your fiction. Do you feel like there's one thing in particular over another that really kind of helps you with your writing style, or helps you with sort of the way that you'd like to, see your characters evolve, things like that?
Yeah. So I mean, there is, yeah, I'm definitely myself, like not even my writing, myself. I am a product of, like a million different, honestly, like a bunch of fiction, like stuff, like,
Yeah.
I've said it often. Star Trek raised me. My parents didn't, I mean, like they literally plopped me in front of the television. I mean, it was, and that's what I watched all the time. So that has a huge influence on me. As far, yeah, I mean, I can kind of trace where everything comes from, and I mean, this goes back to something I think I was saying on a Patreon Q&A recently, or I'm not sure where I said it, but like the only thing I do, like my inspiration in what I put out there, all the content that I put out there is, and maybe this is, I don't know, cliche or something to say, but it's absolutely real for me. It's the content that I want to be in the world that's not there, like that doesn't exist anymore, or never existed. Or, I mean, that's my, if I have a secret, that's my secret, is that I make what I want to see. Now, fortunately, and I think this is a big deal. Stephanie and I actually talked about this a bit on the Relationship Rhomba show that I did on Patreon. Fortunately, I can answer the philosophical question, what do I want? And from that question comes all of this content, comes Sovryn Tech, comes the fiction, comes the newsletter, comes the video games, comes the dark Android book, whatever. I know what I want to exist in the world. I couldn't, like with the dark Android book, I couldn't believe it. There is no other book like that out there. Not for like the, the run of the mill consumer, or even the more, tech advanced. That style of book does not exist. There's like pen testing books for, more the developer side and everything, but for the user, be it advanced or beginner, I was shocked that you go to Amazon and I mean it's nowhere. So bottom line, I know what I want. I know what I want to see in the world. I know what I want my world to look like. And so that's my inspiration is that where that want comes from, is that a byproduct of Star Trek, Star Wars, Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, Harlan Ellison's writing, go down the list. Yeah, maybe, I mean, there's something to be said for environment, but yeah, I can answer that question. I know what I want. So does that work for you, Daniel?
It does. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
So you got anything else?
In case at the end there aren't any other questions and you need to fill an hour, I would be interested to hear a bit more about what happened with the hard fork. But I'm guessing you're going to cover that in probably Sovryn Tech Prime at some point. So I can wait.
Okay, yeah. So there's already people in the YouTube chat asking about that, and I'll talk about it briefly. But yeah, I'll get to some of the stuff that's in the YouTube chat. But I mean, I guess I'll ask you, Daniel, quick. I mean, if was there something specific you wanted to ask about the hard fork? I am going to be talking about it on the Sovryn Tech Prime episode. That's true. But if you have something specific,
well, the thing that the thing that can. So I feel almost ashamed to admit it. Like I've maybe 5 years ago, no, not 5 years ago, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I knew everything there was to know about Bitcoin, or so I thought. And I don't anymore. I really, really don't. And just because I've kind of gotten a bit disillusioned by it all, partly professionally because I wanted to get, I was working for an accounting firm, big accounting firm, and I wanted to get them to get into the cryptocurrency space. And they kind of, shot it down. And that was kind of, to me, that was like, okay, and actually, if you have a moment, I mean, so one of the things that really sort of shocked me about it wasn't so much that they shut it down, was just their attitude around it. There was a guy from the accounting firm that I worked at who went to a Bitcoin conference, and he was telling a story, and so fucking patronizing. It's not even believable if I tell you, you'd think I'm lying. But he came back, and or he didn't come back, but he was in the conference room where it was myself, one other guy, trying to kind of convince them to, hey, let's do an audit of a Bitcoin company, and this is what it was going to look like. And I was going through the IT side. The other guy was going through the accounting side. And, that was, we were getting somewhere. And this guy was kind of telling a story about this conference that he was in. And this was, by the way, one of the conferences where a lot of the sort of VC and all of the, you know, banking, whatever, people were at. And he was kind of talking about, I'm guessing, anarchist, libertarian, whatever, non-mainstream sort of proponent of Bitcoin who was coming in. And he looked not like a regular guy with a suit and a tie, long hair, had a dog. I don't remember what it was. But then the adults came into the room. And he actually used, you know, now that the adults are in the room.
Yeah.
That he used that phrase. It's burnt in my memory because I remember how patronizing it was, and I almost like barged out of the room because I was just so fierce. And then I realized, well, adults in the room don't barge out of the room, so you know. But you know, saying, okay, now the adults are in the room, meaning, okay, now JP Morgan Chase is into Bitcoin, so we don't need, you know, these pesky whatever. And that really kind of, I'm guessing now that I'm kind of thinking about it, that reaction, probably the reaction that I had of just completely associating with Bitcoin. Maybe I should have disassociated with, you know, the other, but it kind of made me realize that it's not going to be for a good 10, 15, 20 years that any of this is going to get to a stage where I can actually use it in a meaningful way in, you know, in my career or be an expert in it. So all I really need to know is how to have and hold. And I have my Mycelium wallet, and I may or may not have Bitcoin in a paper wallet in my safe, and that's about it, right? So it's knowing enough to have and hold, and to have and spend, or to have and donate. That's what I know about Bitcoin. And by this point, I'm so sort of out of it that really questions like, well, now with the Bitcoin that I have in my paper wallet, do I own Bitcoin or do I own Bitcoin Cash?
Right.
And like, I mean, questions at that level of like, well, what happens now? Do I have like 3 Bitcoins worth of Bitcoin and 3 Bitcoins worth of Bitcoin Cash? Or do I have like, how do I, you know, if Bitcoin Cash has gone up from like 200 to 700 in the last day and a half, like, does that mean that I gained from it? I really just don't even know what to ask. So
sure.
I would say, bear in mind you have some in your audience who just would really need a primer on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good point. So first off, actually, I just want to say I noticed in the YouTube live chat, Tatiana Moroz is hanging out there, which we all love Tatiana on Sovryn Tech, one of our favorite people on the whole planet. So, and of course, you want to check out her stuff, including her Tatiana show that gets into a lot of what, honestly, some of what Daniel was talking about, but from more of that beginner perspective. I definitely recommend checking out her show. You can go to thetatianashow.com to do that. But yeah, so, you know, in the abstract of what you're talking about, Daniel, like, I totally feel you. And I talk about this often, and there's a reason that on Sovryn Tech, like, it's a rare occasion now that I really even dig deep or even mention so much any kind of blockchain technology, because yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, a few years ago or a few months ago, whatever, you know, there was a time where you feel like you could kind of know everything. And part of the reason is because it was a community effort. And so everything was kind of transparent and everybody was talking about it and willing to talk about it, and people were excited. Okay. Which is sort of the nature of anything that kind of becomes grassroots or that starts off as grassroots. But now, you know, that phrase of that meeting that you described where the guy walks in and says, "Hey, the adults are here." I've heard similar stories to that by many, many people, with almost the same wording of the adults are here now, you know, or maybe it's the opposite where it's like, okay, the kids can leave, or they would say specifically the anarchists can leave now, etc. And yeah, I mean, it's depressing because you feel like you really have, you know, as someone who's a Bitcoin enthusiast or whatever else, and I can certainly speak for myself. I mean, it's depressing because it's like you don't have, you don't have any control or say anymore. Not really. I mean, what happened with Bitcoin Cash, which is effectively done by 2 guys, Roger Ver and another guy who's kind of the Roger Ver of India, as I understand it. They really, all that's happened here is they've made an altcoin. I mean, that's the bottom line, is that they have made, with Bitcoin Cash as compared to Bitcoin Cash is just an altcoin. It's not it's not really Bitcoin. They're just using the name, and they have enough, shall we say, personal capital or social capital to where that they can get away with using the term Bitcoin, as to where if any other like two guys or any other developers or whatever came out and said, oh, we're making Bitcoin 2 or Bitcoin Cash or something like that, they would have been a laughing stock and nobody would have taken them seriously. So there's something to be said for the social clout involved in this whole situation. As far as what's going on, I mean, Bitcoin, just to prove that it's an altcoin, Bitcoin is hitting like record highs in value, right? As to where Bitcoin Cash, not to say that it's not doing well for itself, but I sort of liken this to what happened when Zcash came out back last October. When it first came out, it was almost, I don't know, it was some stupid number. It was like $1 trillion a coin because nobody could really get their hands on it. And so it sort of had this intrinsic value, or not intrinsic, it sort of had this inherent value that people attributed to it just because nobody really had it and nobody knew what to do with it. So there was kind of this like ethereal notion, just in not Ethereum, but ethereal notion in the sky. That's like, oh, this must be so valuable because we can't get our hands on it, but everybody's talking about this cryptocurrency. Same thing I think is happening with Bitcoin Cash. Its value right now is completely based upon not just necessarily its scarcity, because it's not technically scarce, right? Because anybody can just take their private keys from their wallet. They can export their wallet from their wallet and input it into a Bitcoin Cash wallet. The problem is there aren't really any Bitcoin Cash wallets. So it's not that there's a scarcity, because there's as many Bitcoin Cash theoretically as there is Bitcoin. The problem is that there's nothing to do with it, and everybody's just like kind of has this weird notion in their head that that this must be valuable because everybody's talking about it, but nobody has it. So, we're in right now, and this is why I'm happy to wait a few more days until I really talk about it deep on this week's Sovryn Tech on Saturday. Because right now, I think the perceptions are very skewed of what's happening, but I think the reality that's coming up is that the confidence still exists in Bitcoin. Not everybody ran off to Bitcoin Cash, whether they could or couldn't. And Bitcoin Cash might have a future, but that future is relative to the same future that Litecoin has, that Zcash has, or that any altcoin really has. So I don't see this as any kind of death knell, or really even any genuine improvement over Bitcoin, because a lot of the things being implemented into Bitcoin Cash, block sizes, SegWit, all that, whatever, are really now on a timetable to be added into Bitcoin. They may never be, but there is like a seemingly a more confident timetable of when that's going to happen, and it's a matter of months. So I think, the real takeaway, the real walkaway here is that you had a couple of guys, Roger Ver and someone else, and I'm not saying this necessarily with disrespect, but you had a couple of guys who had a lot of social clout, who are well respected or just infamous, either one. That they decided to make an altcoin, and that's what they did. And that's really, and they shortcutted. The one thing that's interesting about this is they really sort of shortcutted the problem of distribution. Like, a lot of people freak out about Zcash because they don't like the Genesis block and how that worked out. Like, there was this, big ceremony and everything. And do they really have control of their coins? Blah, 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 blah. They actually solved a really great problem. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if other altcoins started doing this, where they will just ask for your Bitcoin, your wallet key, effectively, and you would input that. Of course, you'd want to trust the fucking wallet you're putting it into, but you would put that in, and then you would have that amount, and that, after a fashion, like, creates almost probably the most fair distribution that you could devise. So I see Bitcoin Cash, again, just as a very clever altcoin. Nothing tragic, nothing bad has happened. There are a lot of Bitcoin services down yesterday. There are a lot of sites not sure what to do. Trezor had problems, which Trezor was the hardware wallet. Trezor was the one wallet that seemed to have its ducks in a row to accept and function with Bitcoin Cash from day one being August 1st. But even they had problems. So there's already issues. And so, again, the utility is not really there yet. But again, end of the day, this is really just a very clever altcoin. And that's my take, my opinion on it. And pay it, could it be nice to have extra money because you already acquired or mined or did whatever you did to get all that Bitcoin? Yeah, sure. So, and I think that there's a lot to really say about that. I don't know how deep I want to go into it right now, because, well, this is weird, right? Like, imagine, change the scenario to where we're not talking about Bitcoin, but we're talking about US dollars. And that some country somewhere said, we'll match, any amount of US dollars that you have. You just, you show us your account routing number or whatever, and we'll match everything. And then you can come and spend the money here. I mean, if you asked anybody at the Mises Institute or some other, economic institution that has at least some kind of idea of how economics actually works, they'd say that was ridiculous. It's a death knell. That's like, there's no way how you can't just make that out of thin air. There's a problem. I mean, this is disaster waiting to happen, and that country is going to fold. But somehow this seems, at least in the first couple of days, seems to be working, that you could do just that very thing. With Bitcoin. And so what I think is interesting, and I don't really have a conclusion, I don't have like an answer to give here, but it's just interesting that, wow, this is the digital realm in general, the digital world in general, be it Bitcoin, be it MP3s, BitTorrents, whatever it ends up being, is really changing the face of economics and what anybody understands of economics, in my opinion. That's the point I want to make, but I don't really have I don't have a grand point to make on that, or a grand conclusion. So anyway,
I'm curious in terms of that last point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just very quick, and I'll be on my merry way. I think I'm just on that last point. It's kind of like with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. I don't necessarily think that they were trying to say, okay, we're going to create, a finite quantity of money out of thin air, like they're trying to do. I think it's more along the lines of, well, we're trying to replace the legacy system. So, it's just that, the same amount of money existed, but it's now going to be on a different fork. So I'm just curious. That's one of the things that you're saying, I guess, is that this is creating such a new situation that people don't really know how to get their heads around it. But I'll look forward to hearing whatever you have to say on Saturday. I'll let the others have their turn.
Sure. Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it, man.
Okay, awesome. Bye.
Yeah, bye. All right. So let's see what else we have in the YouTube chat. Woo! Thoughts on that fork? Yeah, we just talked a bit about it. Tatiana says, "Sup, homies? Woo, sup." Let's see. Jacob, or we have Q class. As in John Delancey, what exactly are you saying here? Q class. So what I meant by Q class celebrity was that I'm very low on the totem pole of anything remotely like a celebrity. Yeah, John Delancey. Boy, I'll tell you, if you read the Sovryn Tech newsletter, I shared in that there was the latest episode. It's episode 9. I think there's going to be 10 total, because there's a whole issue with CBS and Paramount suing the pants off of anybody trying to make a Star Trek fan film that actually does something serious, or an independent Star Trek production. But I think they're going to get I think they get to make episode 10, but episode 9 of Star Trek Continues came out, and John Delancey was in it, along with a lot of other great actors, including Anne Lockhart, who I'm a huge fan of. In fact, well, anyway, I talked about in the newsletter, but that episode 9 of Star Trek Continues was fucking awesome. Let's see. Are there going to be more forks? I don't see why not. Again, I don't, like, calling it a fork, I think, is even a misnomer. This is going to be a point that I'm going to bring up on the show. This really isn't a fork. This is an altcoin, straight up. And I've felt that way many times. I've said it back when some of these arguments were heated, say like in 2013 and 2014. I mean, because some of these arguments are very old of what needs to be done, understand, very old in the cryptocurrency space. But yeah, I think it would behoove everybody to get a sense of reality that, to get a grounding. I don't want to say a sense of reality, because that's meaning that I'm disseminating some kind of great truth or something, which I don't know that I am. But to get some kind of grounding, and I really feel like calling this a fork is just marketing. Like, I think that's clever marketing on Roger's part. and on anybody that's supporting Bitcoin Cash. I know there's some kind of theory out there that effectively that the leads behind, and I guess this would include Roger, the leads behind Bitcoin Cash are they want everybody to get on board with it. Then they actually want Bitcoin Cash to tank, and then they'll buy out all the Bitcoin Cash. And then once they have that totally controlling stake in Bitcoin Cash, they're going to fuck with all the exchanges, kind of like a mafia style, cabal style action. I know that's a theory that's going around. I'm not saying I believe it. I'm not saying I subscribe to it. I'm just saying that's out there. Okay. As far as something that's going on. But one of the ways to keep that really from happening is, again, to just like, let's clear the air here. This isn't a fork. This is an altcoin. This is another coin that found a clever way that really all it is, the act of like I was just saying to Daniel there, the act of taking your keys and transferring them into, like, say, the Electrum Cash wallet, which I don't even think is out yet, or whatever wallet or system will accept, Bitcoin Cash, is really just a distribution system. It's not actually like, it's not really Bitcoin just transferring. This is an altcoin that has, again, a very clever distribution system. In my opinion, that's my opinion on that. Okay, looks like Tatiana's jumping on the trampoline. Woo, good for you. Work it out, girl. Love it. Let's see. BTC forkmonitor.info shows 5 different things. Or are there going to be multiple forks? Yeah, that's what that's in reference to. Can you sweep the BCH into Coinami wallet? I don't know. I haven't used Coinami wallet. I'm pretty particular in what wallets that I actually recommend. Oh, looks like Tatiana is also making carbonara. Phenomenal. She has such amazing taste. She really does. So anyway, yeah, I'm very particular in what wallets I allow for. I am aware that apparently BitPay is going to be integrating Bitcoin Cash very soon, to where the BitPay wallet, which is also similar code to the CoPay wallet, which is one that a couple Patreon episodes ago I recommended using, because you yourself can set up, with no one else's help and with nobody else needing to be involved, you can set up a very nice multi-sig wallet, and I went over how to do that in a recent Patreon episode. So, I mean, this is a real challenge that's going on with this is, okay, what the fuck actually even accepts, can use, or takes Bitcoin Cash? I mean, I know some of the answers to this, but it seems like a lot of people are just kind of waiting, and it's taking time. And there's the chance, that this all might fall flat on its face. And then there's the chance that that's the point, that's kind of supposed to happen for other reasons. So anyway, let's see. Any negative response from the latest short story? Ooh, that's a good question. Thank you for asking a question. I just ran out. Yeah, so the latest short story, what? I don't even know how to pronounce the word that I gave the title of the short story to. In fact, funny story. So that word was like the word of the day for dictionary.com when I was writing that story. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I think it's aniosis might be the actual, might be how you pronounce that. But no, I haven't gotten any negative response from that story, aniosis. And, obviously that's a story that deals with the character of Valeria that's never really been fleshed out too much. And mainly it's just because, the voice actor involved has a life and is very busy and everything. But I want to include her so badly that, I do it. So yeah, that was fun to kind of lay that out. I haven't gotten any negative response. I've only gotten a couple of bits of, kind of positive feedback. I was a little worried about putting that in because, and I put at the top of it, I said, warning, very graphic content, right? Because I mean, it's shy of hardcore porn, that I wrote at the end of this newsletter. And I mean, and it has, and here's a little bit of here's a funny story for you. So Stephanie and I were visiting family last week. We were visiting, her family, and her mother, who is just one of the most amazing women on planet Earth. I mean, just straight up, I know I say that about a lot of women, but a lot of women deserve it. She's certainly one that's, cream of the crop. And, at one point, like she was asking how things are going. And I mean, and she knows the deal. She knows about Sex and Science Hour. She understands, and she's like, and I was telling her about the newsletter and how, I already have a lot of, I have a few hundred subscribers, it's open rates are phenomenal. Like I get 80% open rates, that's huge, to get that kind of open rate. And that's been a great venture on my part so far. And I think that it's actually helped sell a lot of copies of Dark Android as well. But she's like, oh, can I sign up for it? And I was like, yeah, go to zog.email. And then like after Stephanie read the story that I wrote about Valeria, the Eniosis story, the short fiction, because I mean, like there's a part in that where, yeah, I mean, it's Agent Brian Sovryn and Dr. Stephanie Murphy. And like, there's this crazy three-way with this gal. And suddenly she's like, and you told my mom to sign up for your newsletter? And I was like, oh, whoops. I said, well, I know she hasn't yet, so I'll just do my best to make sure that sort of shit doesn't happen again. Oh, boy. Anyway. Yeah, so no negative responses, but I'll tell you, like your feedback, listener feedback on the short fiction in particular, I got a lot of negative. Okay, let me finish my sentence. On the short fiction in particular, is very helpful. Like really, and you can be as specific and as critical and as even if you want to be harsh about it, that's totally fine. Like that really helps me, A, become a better writer, and B, see more of where, people kind of are like where this goes, because I mean, I do it for me, like I said to Daniel, but at the same time, I like entertaining people. So, hey, I'll tell you what I did. I mean, I still have negative response from the new intros that were done. Some people thought that they said that the actress, the voice actress for Dr. Goldblossom, boy, she really went hardcore. She went all the way, and I appreciate all that. Those intros will be returning. I'm just gonna be editing them up a little bit, shorten them down. So okay, let's see what else we have here. Another question. That was a short story. Changing tune. Oh wait. Well, let me try and do this in order of topic. Another person says, please don't shy away from writing hardcore porn in your newsletter. Well, thank you. And I won't shy away from it. I won't do it every week. Like I said, at the end of the newsletter, I wrote like a really ultra sexy story because A, I really want sex to be like a part of everything I do. And B, the last newsletter story had no sex in it whatsoever. So I was like, okay, well, I got to make up for this. I got to make good with my audience. And so I ramped it up pretty high, but Stephanie thought it was hot as hell. So hey, I take that as a win. Okay, let's see. I don't remember exactly what it was, but my phone's TTS had no problem pronouncing it. Oh, text to speech. Yeah. Aniosis or something. Well, regardless, I think so. Aniosis, just to explain quick, means like not being totally in the emotions and totally in your feelings and not like thinking about it. Like there's no really cognitive or conscious thought going on. And like, as soon as I saw that word, I was like, yeah, like that's that state that you want to like try and get somebody into, while you're stooping and like get them to where, yeah, it's just, they're totally feeling, the pleasure, the lust, the whole thing. And that's certainly what I shoot for when, I'm performing. Let's see. So, okay. Changing tune. I now work out several days per week, and you've discussed your workout. Meaning mine, the Stallions. However, aside from sexy time, do you do any cardio? If so, what? Great question. I don't do a whole lot of cardio. We do have a very nice treadmill. I don't really use it often. I mean, it's a treadmill that can handle me. Part of the reason I don't do a lot of cardio is that I'm again, not pat on the back, just, statement of fact. I'm a really big guy, and, it's hard for me, unless I'm going to like a professional gym, to find equipment that can really like kind of handle my weight and my intensity and a lot of that. So that's the main reason I haven't done a whole lot of cardio. I read a book, and I bet maybe I can try and look it up here quickly while I'm talking. I read a book years and years and years ago, over a decade ago, by Sylvester Stallone, of all people, who I'm a big fan of. And Stallone, in his book, well, there's a few different things that he talked about in it. One of them was the the wonders of apple cider vinegar, but that's another story. But I keep I keep apple cider vinegar well stocked. Okay, so yeah, so the book is from 2005, and it's moves. That's a great, because Sly Stallone, right? The book is Sly Moves, and in that he talks about, and the case made a lot of sense to me back then. That cardio for men, like that men were going towards this in this direction, that all men were doing was cardio, and cardio, running, a lot of this other stuff. And he said, like, they're really losing that ability to, to go for the raw power and the size. And I was like, yeah, I want the raw power and the size. Then Rob Wolf's book, or his books about the paleo diet and everything, he talked about how, in his opinion, and it's his opinion, in the past, or, in the ancient past, the Paleolithic times, that humans were generally, other than a sprint here and there, perhaps to catch a deer or something along those lines, that humans were very slow moving. Certainly, at least, males were, that they didn't go very fast. So he kind of, to some degree, speaks against cardio as well, if you're trying to go for that mass, and if you're trying to go for that size. And like I said, many times, like, my workout goals, I want to be just a monster. Like, I mean, I just want to be a giant. I mean, I don't need to be like Ron Coleman or something, or Lee Haney, or any of those guys. But I really want to be a big, muscular guy. So, oh yeah, someone in, what about for chicks? Well, you see, this is the thing. So, that's okay. So HIIT is the shit. HIIT is HIIT, high intensity interval training, which is kind of cardio. I mean, there's times where I do that, especially like burpees. Like, if I need to trim down, and I'm pretty much getting onto a trim down cycle now, because you need to bulk up, as in you need to eat a ton while you're building muscle mass. And then then once you bulk up, and you're going to look a little fat at times, perhaps, not to say that I'm, necessarily looking fat, but then you want to cut that way back. And that's when cardio can be really helpful, is on that cut back, and HIIT is really good for that. High intensity interval training. There's a website I recommend all the time. It's called Darebee, DAREBEE.com. Darebee.com, run by Neela Ray. She is a sweetheart. That great website that has a lot of HIIT training and all that. It's all about what stage you're at. So I'm not really knocking cardio. It's all about what stage you're at and what goals you're going for. Because I'm not saying that cardio is wrong. I'm not saying that HIIT is wrong. I'm not saying any of these things are wrong to do. It's just, what's your goals? What are you looking to look like? I mean, a lot of guys are going for not size, but a functional strength. In that case, cardio is fucking awesome, right? Functional strength, meaning that you have a lot of kind of body control. That's where, a lot of there's bodybuilders like Arnold could barely do a pull-up. I mean, he could do some, sure, but he had a hard time, partly because, like, his strength wasn't necessarily functional. A lot of it was for show, right? For a Mr. Olympia or something. So that's something to keep in mind. And those are two great questions, or the one great question to ask yourself before you start working out. What are your goals? What do you want to look like? I'm not saying do any woo visualization, but know what you want to look like, because the workouts will be very different. Tatiana says, I can't do a single burpee. I suck. What about for chicks? Well, it's the same thing. Like, because gals can totally, like, so Stephanie and I were watching American Ninja Warrior last night. We love American Ninja Warrior. Awesome show. And we were watching a couple of the gals on there, and there was one in particular, her name's Barkley. And like, her upper body, I mean, it's crazy. Like, you can just see it, the shoulders, the whole thing. I mean, she's got tremendous muscle. I think she looks sexy as hell. And obviously it allows her to get through the course, because there's a lot of upper body strength required. And so I'm sure she does a regimen that's less, because it's American Ninja Warrior, there's some cardio in there involved, but I'm sure she does a ton of strength training, right? Going for that size and whatever else. And that's totally valid, because a woman can look great like that. Then there is another gal there, and unfortunately she's one of the more famous ones. Her name's escaping me at the moment. Yeah, well, there's Jess Graff, right, where she doesn't look like a bodybuilder at all, but she has a lot of that functional strength. My guess is that someone like Jess Graff, who's one of the most famous female American, woman American Ninja Warriors, that she does a shit ton of cardio. So, it's all what you want your body to look like. Do you want to show off the muscle? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, and honestly, like, I haven't spent as much time researching like women's workouts as much as I have with men, obviously. And certainly I have a certain direction that I want to go. Yeah. And other people are saying, yeah, it depends on your goals, Tatiana. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh yeah, Derby is the best. Yeah, thank you. I love that site. I've been recommending that for years. In fact, like I think I mentioned in today's earlier Q&A, I went and saw Paige Peterson, Pixel. I went and saw her compete in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu match. And I know that she kind of got her resurgence restarted on working out and everything through Derby, by my recommendation. And so, and she looked great out in that ring. I mean, or that mat, out in the mat. She looked fantastic. I mean, she didn't win, but she looked fantastic. And she, very, very slippery, and I mean, it was awesome. So yeah, Derby, I think, is a great foundation. Or taking you further, I still do Derby workouts. I do Derby workouts at least a couple days a week. I mean, there's ones with weights, there's ones without. So yeah, do definitely check out that site. Let's see, another goal, look good naked. Yeah, that's definitely one of my big goals, but that's part of the reason why I'm going for the size. I mean, I want to be, very strong as well, because despite what some people think, I'm actually a big believer in self-defense. So, strength is very important to me, but certainly, yeah, I like to look good naked. No doubt about that. And I've said that on Sex and Science Hour that, a lot of people just want to look good naked. That's a totally fucking valid thing to go for. Ric Flair, Ric Flair. Okay. He, when they asked him, one of the, or not one of the greatest professional wrestler of all time, when they asked him during like the steroid scandals back in the 90s, what was the deal with, did you do steroids and all this stuff? And he's like, yeah, he said, but you got to understand, he says, like, I wasn't going for Hulk Hogan. I wasn't going for these crazy sizes. I just wanted to have that look, and it helped me achieve that look a little easier. And so I went for it. And, that's the thing. He's admitting, like, I'm not going for the strength of the size. I just wanted to have a certain look and go for it. That's totally valid. The greatest athletes in the world are all about that look sometimes. So nothing wrong with that. Let's see. Tatiana says, I don't want to run. That sounds horrible. All kidding aside, I have a couch to 5K app I am starting tomorrow. It's raining today. I did it before, but then I went away, so I stopped. Yeah, some of those apps are awesome. I know Stephanie uses a couple of them, and they're really great. Not wanting to run, yeah, I'm not a big runner either. And I mean, and you could say I'm using my confirmation bias with, like I mentioned about Rob Wolf, where he says that, well, Rob Wolf has this whole theory, and it's not just him. There's other scientists that, they have some research on this. The idea is that, Paleolithic humans, like particularly the guys, were, kind of like that monster, like I described. I mean, they were huge, and one could say, well, how could they eat all the calories that could allow them to get that way? Well, when the bulk of your life is spent hunting, you're going to do a pretty good job at that. And you're going to be, eating up quite a bit. But anyway, he has this whole theory that they were just massive, before the Neolithic, before farming came in. And that, yeah, they were kind of slow moving unless, at various points they needed to do sprints. And he recommends that not really running, but that every once in a while get into the habit of doing sprints. And I that's something that I do. I do sprints up a hill. That's really, I find very helpful for that. But I generally don't do running either. But again, it's different goals, and certainly I can understand where women maybe have a different look that they're going for. Obviously different than what I would be going for. And then someone says, of course, yeah, Casey Catanzaro. Yeah, that's the woman I was thinking of earlier from American Ninja Warrior. Thank you. I mean, sexy as hell, unbelievable. It's really something. Both Stephanie and I are looking at each other like, wow, yeah. Anyway, let's see. So of course she looked fantastic. She's Pixel. You are absolutely right about that, sir. Pixel's amazing. So let's see. Tatiana says, what do you think of the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Body book? So I've looked at that, and I don't know. There might be some good nuggets in there, but I first off, I've seen Tim Ferriss physically. I've never been impressed with his look, and he seems to constantly injure himself. Now, maybe that's because of the amount of experimentation and everything that he goes through, but I think Tim Ferriss is just a really skeevy guy. And I'll admit it, like I'm totally, if jealous is the word, I don't know. I despise just how popular like his podcast is and everything. He never really talks about shit. He just has big name guests on there. Like he has Arnold on there, or he has some other people. Like he's not really delivering any fucking content, you know? And he just drives me up the fucking wall. So I think he's a really skeevy guy. Like his 4-hour work week and all that. A lot of it's, I don't know. A lot of it feels like ugly capitalism. Anyway, I'll leave that at that. So the 4-Hour Body Book, you know, I don't have a whole lot to say on it. Just Tim Ferriss drives me nuts. Okay. So let's see. Are you going to watch the Ric Flair 30 for 30 documentary? Yeah, I've been waiting years. They had been tweeting about this. I dare say 2 years ago. This will be on ESPN, of course. I will totally be all over that. Quick funny story. Okay. Tatiana says, tell us how you really feel. LOL. Yeah. But for the Ric Flair 30 for 30 documentary, I think this is coming out in November or October. Very exciting. I recommend anybody watch this because, and I've said this on Sovryn Tech before, understand the wrestling world is the world in microcosm. It's politics in microcosm because what you see in the ring is not what's happening backstage. You know, really backstage, everybody's buddy, right? And the way that they interact with the crowd is as real time of a business being run by every single wrestler, by every individual. Okay. That I think you can learn so much about how to do business, about style, about timing, about how to react. You know, I love Steve Jobs. He says, he was talking like, there's this classic video of Steve Jobs where he gets insulted by somebody. You know, at I think it was at like a WWDC or something. And you see how he turns the insult around to where he ends up kind of looking good in the end. And the first thing that he does is he takes a breath before he allows, because as soon as somebody insults you, right, you want to react with like, oh, what the fuck's wrong with you, motherfucker, right? You want to do it all New York style, which I know I'm from New York. I'm sure Tatiana can relate. But anyway, but you know what he said was, he's like, and you see it in the video, he breathes, he stops for a second because he's keeping that first reaction from happening. And it's the most important part of how to react to something like that. And I think in business, that is an incredible skill. Yeah, Tatiana says motherfuckers. Yeah. But in business, it's an incredible skill to breathe and stop and assess. Like what exactly is going on? You know, I mean, I get like with Sovryn Tech, I get hate mail nonstop. Like, I mean, I've actually gotten to the point that my Sovryn Tech email, I only open it like 2-3 times a week because I would just spend all the time just like reading all these people. And for some reason, speaking of motherfuckers, for some reason, these motherfuckers still listen. You know, I know their IP addresses and their emails. I mean, it's crazy. Okay. But I mean, it gets crazy. But the thing is that, yeah, you pause like before I just, start writing back to them. If I even bothered to, I just pause and you got to get in that breath and then you can actually react in a way that could be beneficial to what you have going on in the business. That's really important. Tatiana very kindly says, what kind of idiots hate you, fools? So, boy, I haven't even checked. I got to look in the Hangouts. No, nobody's in the Hangouts room. And we're almost at about the hour mark. So if anybody wants to get in kind of last questions on all of this, you can type them out either in the YouTube live chat or, there's still time for people to join the Hangout itself if you want. Totally up to you how you want to go about that. But yeah, I love the fitness questions. I think that's, fitness is so key for a lot of reasons. One of them is that, I think, mind and body, and this is definitely going to sound cliche, mind and, all right, I'll finish this thought. And then there's another question from Tatiana. Mind and body, like there's synergy there. Okay. There's like the health of one directly correlates, in my opinion, in many ways to the health of the other. Okay. It's kind of like, it sort of reminds you of, for an analogy, like a dietitian walks in and starts telling you, okay, stop eating fat, which don't do that, but stop eating fat, stop eating, fried chicken, and stop eating all this stuff. And you look at them and they weigh some odd 300, 400 pounds. And you go, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you see that there's some kind of a disconnect here. Something's not right. Something's not coming together. And of course, those same dietitians, again, are giving you bad advice to stop eating fat. I would argue that's the worst thing to do. If anything, eat more fat and obviously, less carbs, not necessarily zero carbs. So yeah, I think that there's a correlation. Like, a healthy mind will come with a healthy body. I know there's podcasts called that, but, and not always vice versa. And this isn't 100% true, but it's a good start. So I think that that's really, really important, that those two are healthy together at the same time. So, okay, let's get to maybe the last two questions here. Let's see. What's your favorite? This is from Tatiana. What's your favorite softcore porno? Actually, I have an answer to that. And I've showed it to Stephanie, and she loved it. It's called, is it the Body Beautiful? Actually, you know what? I'll keep talking. But my favorite softcore porn, I'm a huge fan of softcore porn. Tatiana's probably heard me say this, or I've talked about it on Sex and Science Hour or something. But I love softcore porn because I don't know, it just seems a little more loving. Like, there's a few more emotions involved than just like, the gag reflex, right? there's a little something extra going on. And in the 90s, it was a magical fucking time for all of these kinds of movies. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so it has a few different names. It's The Body Beautiful, or The Click, or it's also called Ultimate Attraction. And let me see if I can just punch up. Oops, I hit the microphone. That's bad form, Brian. Let me see if I can get the year on that. And the year is 1997. So if that helps you out, The Body Beautiful, 1997. I think that this is a phenomenal little film, and Stephanie loved it. Got everybody very hot, I must admit. Maybe I'm revealing too much, and well, we'll see how she feels about it later. And the great thing about that movie, like, what it is somebody just makes this device that it's almost like Orgasmo, but it was before Orgasmo came out. But it's just this device that makes people like horny, and people just like point at you and click it, and suddenly, everybody in the room is getting randy and everything. And yeah, it's so cool. And the other nice thing too was that it wasn't so much an issue at the time in the 90s in the hardcore porn industry, but like the look of the women seemed to be just kind of a higher quality. And I'm speaking very conventionally, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Okay. But very conventionally, I don't know, just the production and the look of the women, and there'd be more story in softcore porn. I love softcore porn way more than I like hardcore porn. No doubt about it. I just shared that answer with a friend as a joke, I guess. Anyway, okay. Feel free to all right. Let me just say this. All right. I'm not going to name names. I provide a lot of media for a lot of women. Okay. I have folders for specific individuals, and I have to keep track of them and keep them updated. I am a librarian, and I take my job very seriously. Let's see, because the person that said that is not the only one. All right. So what other questions do we have there? When will there be more hentai reviews? Yeah, Stephanie and I think are finally into a time where we have a stretch where we have time to watch those. Like, I can review them right now. If I wanted to talk about Bible Black, or the rest of Fencer of Minerva, or the Venus 5, or something like that, of hentai, which hentai, of course, is pornographic anime from Japan. I could just talk about them outright. And I think they're wonderful. But I like to watch them with Stephanie. And then after we watch it, we do a review right after. So more of those will be coming. Thank you for asking about that. Some of them I actually have recorded and I haven't released them, but anyway, let's see, there's an Alice in Wonderland porn musical. I'll tell you, one of my favorite hardcore porn movies is, they made the one, what was Charlie Sheen's wife there? Not Brie Benson. Brie Olson. She was in the Scooby-Doo. I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan. She was in the Scooby-Doo porn, and that's awesome, because everybody knows that, like, Velma, not Daphne, Velma, that's where it's at. Let's see. I saw it posted about, I'm not sure what that is. Tatiana says the life of a stallion isn't always going to be easy. Well, I tell you, but it's worth it every single time. And I mean, every time. Okay. Well, another question, almost 5:00. So you can still get in a couple questions if you want. Well, who are all the little Funko Pops on your shelf? Okay, so I don't think I can give you a tour of all of them, and this will, for the audio, won't be necessarily very interesting, I imagine, but I will break them down. I just re-asked that. So to my right, would that be your left on video? Right here I have Jill Valentine from Jill Valentine is from the Resident Evil series. I think you're seeing her here, and we'll put her back. Next to Jill, who's always standing at the ready, is one of my favorite heroes of all time. That is Tuxedo Mask from Sailor Moon. I can't tell you, Daniel earlier was asking about, like, what are your influences and everything. Sailor Moon was a huge influence for me. Like, I watched that every morning before going off to school. And, one guy, you only had one guy, and then you had like 5, 6, 7 women. Right. As far as being the heroic troop, which is the opposite of just about any other franchise. Right. I mean, you think G.I. Joe, you're lucky if you have Lady J or Scarlet. Or if you think about, I don't know, just go down the list. Thundercats, where you have Chitara, or Voltron, where you have, Princess Aurora or something. It's always like one woman. As to where with Sailor Moon, it was the exact opposite. And I thought that was fucking awesome. And, as I grew older, hot that, oh no, you only have the one dude. You only have Tuxedo Mask. But then you have all the gals. And so you can kind of get maybe where my proclivities in my fiction comes from. Let's see, we have Wonder Woman right here, next to, not far from Tuxedo Mask. Of course, that fits. We have the Silver Surfer. I'll punch him up. There's the Silver Surfer. He has a bit of a bobblehead. Next to the Silver Surfer is Conan the Barbarian, right there. Then followed up by Lemmy Kilmister, of course, of Motorhead fame. Rest in peace, absolutely. Lemmy's God. So then we have the Green Ranger, which I don't think that surprises anybody. Followed by the Phantom from Defenders of the Earth. Might be the most recent thing that people remember the Phantom from, but he's been kind of a pop culture hero for some time. And I know this is boring audio, so I won't spend much more time. Next to him is, the original Golden Stallion, Ric Flair, right there, is a Funko Pop. Ric Flair is, well, you know how I feel about Ric Flair. Next to Slick Rick is Commander Adama from the original 1979 Battlestar Galactica show. Fuck the new show. Then up above it, I won't pull these down, but I have Voltrons there. There's an alien from Independence Day Resurgence, not from the first one, but from the second one. Then I have the Space Marine from Doom. There is Neo from The Matrix standing next to the Space Marine. There's The Rock, not in the wrestler form though, but as from the Fast and the Furious, his character from the Fast and the Furious, which I just love. Then Batman, Adam West's Batman is in the Batmobile next to him, followed by a Klingon from the original series. And I will pull this one up. Then we have Captain Kirk, that being actually Christopher Pine's Captain Kirk from the new Star Trek movies. And there's a few others up there. There's a droid. There's a Star Wars droid, and there's some others kind of laying around. But anyway, there's your tour of all the Funko Pops that I have. Didn't the Green Ranger do a porno? No, that was me in a Green Ranger outfit, actually. Not kidding. Let's see. Woo, yeah. So anyway, you got my tour of all my of most of my Funko Pops, not all of them. But it's a nice collection, and it looks good, and it will fit with a lot of the things that I have planned to do with Sovryn Tech in the future. So I'm not seeing any other questions. So hey, okay, we can start wrapping this up. Been a great time as always. I loved it. It was great to interact. It was great to have Tatiana here. Of course, people go to TatianaMoroz.com or the TatianaShow.com. Absolutely check out her show. It's phenomenal. I've been on there. I've lost track of how many times now I think that I've been on there, but I love it every time. And yeah, other than that, here, tell you what, how about I give you a little something to walk away with. This is kind of a new acquisition of mine that I haven't read any of this in a long, long time. And I'll put it on the screen here. Mobile Suit Gundam, Awakening, Escalation, and Confrontation. This is 3 books in one. If you don't know what Gundam is, or maybe you never heard of Gundam Wing or anything like that, I don't know what to do for you. But Mobile Suit Gundam is the Gundam series is an anime science fiction series that has to do with giant robots that has been in Japan since the 70s. You cannot understate how important the Gundam series is in Japan. There are literal academies about Gundams in Japan. Like, I mean, they're not fucking kidding. I mean, the only analogy I could come up with would be if there was an actual Starfleet, like a real Starfleet Academy that really taught you about like the principles of Star Trek and all that stuff in the US. That's the only comparable way to describe this. Mobile Suit Gundam, the Gundam series is huge in Japan, like so many things. But this is kind of hard to come by, and at varying times this book, goes for a pretty penny. But it's translated from the original like 3 novels that came out in the 70s that do a much better job of telling the story than the actual anime does, by Gundam's original creator. So if you want to check out a pretty awesome book, I mean, this is something that's becoming very popular, are these translations of classic works from other languages. I mentioned, I think on the last Q&A, I think in the July live hangout, a person had asked, what's something hot to read, what's good out there. And I mentioned the Legend of Galactic Heroes, which is another book series that has been around and is huge in Japan, has been around forever, is only now 30, 40 years later, finally getting translated in English. So you want to check that out. But yeah, Mobile Suit Gundam, the novels of Awakening, Escalation, and Confrontation, phenomenal. So I'll put that back. And I think that's it for the questions. And I don't see anybody lined up in the Hangouts. So I'll wrap this up. Awesome interacting with everybody. It was a great time. As always, of course, we'll do another one, come September. And you know what? I like this. I like having the guests kind of show up, like kind of some names. Maybe I can have more of the cabal, the Sovryn Tech Cabal, as the fans have called it, come on, and then we'll see how that can work out. So anyway, New Sex and Science Hour will be out this week. Should have maybe some other content coming out on Patreon. We'll see. And then, of course, the new Sovryn Tech. And this week, like I said last week, the Sovryn Tech episode this week is going to be a lot of blockchain talk, a lot of Bitcoin talk. I'm going to have to break down, a lot of this because I think that we're in the aftermath. Like any way that I would have talked about Bitcoin Cash last week or the week previous it wouldn't have been FUD. But like it would have just been a lot of theory as to where now, like I said earlier, I think we kind of have the reality of the situation. And that is that really this is just an altcoin and it's just a clever one and has great marketing. So anyway, just my opinion on it. Don't mean to demean anybody. I mean, like I said, it's clever. But anyway, let's see. Long live the Sovryn Naughty. Absolutely, baby. So yeah, new Sovryn Tech will be out this week and a whole bunch of other fun stuff coming. So get out there. Get working out. Will you also discuss Parity Wallet? That question just came in. Yeah, I think I'll have that lined up because that just proves everything I've been saying about how Ethereum is such a shit show. That's worth bringing up. A lot of people asked me to talk about it like a couple days after it happened, because it was this, theft, quote unquote. I put that in quotes, of $37 million or something worth of Ethereum. Yeah, we'll probably get into that too. And I got some other nice stuff lined up. My Valerian review will be this week as well. Looking forward to sharing that with you. But I just thought it was such a cool movie. I really dug it. So, okay, that's it. I will see you on the other side after I find the stop broadcast button. Oh, there it is.